What's up, guys? I'm Chris Reynolds, Charlotte 49er all-time leading passer and professional quarterback. I'm calling all quarterbacks to take their game to the next level, not only physically, but mentally. With 50 career starts and thousands of snaps under my belt, I've experienced many of the do's and don'ts of this game. Join me for a one-on-one quarterback session to improve your biomechanics that allows us to throw with more velocity, accuracy, and efficiency. Have a better understanding of defensive scheme and strategy, and create more efficient footwork. Or join me on Sundays at New Age Athlete from 10 to 11 for a Sunday group recovery and polish to recharge the batteries for a new week. When it comes to film study, I offer in-season, one-on-one, Zoom, or in-person sessions to have a better understanding of how opponents try to attack us and to evaluate your play so we can improve for the following week. All options are on my Calendly link, calendly.com/Chris Reynolds QB, or you can find more information on my Instagram page at Chris Reynolds QB Training. I have a deep passion for this game, and I'm excited to take everything that I learned to take the younger QBs to another level. As always, roll Niners.
Welcome back to the Highway 49 podcast. We are back with episode 81 of the show, talking about Charlotte's loss at Indiana this past week, concluding the non-conference. Kind of a tough start of the season for the 49ers. We're going to break all that down and talk a little bit about conference play starting at Rice this week. But as always, let's hit the best thing we've seen this week. Annie, you go first.
Actually, I have two this week.
What?
Yeah, I know, pretty crazy. I mean, the Panthers won on Sunday, so I was just losing my mind. The funniest thing to me is the Panthers like fan base. After a win, after a loss, like the memes that I was seeing all over Twitter was just absolutely sending me. Like every comment about the Red Rifle, everything like we are so back. And I was like, that's exactly how I feel right now.
Super Bowl. Super
Yeah, like
Bowl.
Andy, remember that comment that I made that Andy Dalton
Yeah.
was the bridge quarterback? I retract my statement.
He's still the bridge quarterback. It's just not to Bryce Young.
Yeah. But that was just a really happy moment and happy for the fan base, happy for Andy Dalton. He just looked so happy to be out there. And two, I don't know if you guys watched Dancing with the Stars, but it's come back on this year, and I love Dwight Howard on Dancing with the Stars. He is ginormous, obviously. And like him and his partner, like I think her name's Daniela, but the height difference is crazy. But he is actually so smooth on the dance floor. Like he has a rhythm. He is so good. So I'm rooting for him this season. But I just love when athletes go on Dancing with the Stars and they just get to show like the athleticism that they have and it transpires onto the floor. But Hunter, what have you got?
Yeah, got to go out to California last week for the first time. Went to Sacramento. Walked by. I wish like there was NBA season. I would have definitely hit a Kings game, but walked by the arena and kind of the like park that they have around the arena. It's like got a bunch of bars and restaurants and place for kids to play is like really nice. I hope Charlotte continues to like move in that direction to where it's more like family friendly in that area. But it was awesome out there. Sacramento isn't exactly what you think about when you're like, California. Like it's not a beachy town. It's kind of like Charlotte. It's a small city with an NBA team, smaller scale. Um, but yeah, just I guess getting out there and then having some time this weekend to chill. Had been a lot of going lately, so glad to be home. But yeah, how about you, Jay? I know you've been on the move too.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention that actually. Same shit, different day, because the Las Vegas Aces won last night against the Seattle Storm and they advanced to the second round of the WNBA playoffs. Kelsey Plum had 28 points. My queen had 22 points and I think like 9 rebounds or something. Chelsea Gray looking like the point guard, looking like the finals MVP of 2023. So everything looks good so far, but now they face the New York Liberty, which are the number one seed in the WNBA, led by Sabrina Ionescu, former MVP Jonquel Jones and former MVP Brianna Stewart. So I checked on FanDuel, and the Aces are the underdogs in this series. So we'll see. I might have to hedge. We'll see what happens. However, so far, got through the first round. That's done and over with. So now we go to the Liberty. We'll see what happens. But that's the best thing I've seen this week, watching the Aces advance to the second round of the WNBA playoffs. But I wasn't there on yesterday, Tuesday, and I was out of town, like Hunter said. I was in another state for a music festival. So I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on the Tuesday presser, what you guys thought from the recap. But let's start with, I guess, the presser, right? Tuesday, what were some big takeaways, and what did you guys leave the presser thinking after hearing Biff speak?
Yeah, I mean, you walk into the presser every week. I mean, you lose a game, so I think Biff's kind of opening up. He knows what's expected, knows the week ahead. Opens up with injuries, and there have been a lot of injuries this football season, especially in non-conference. We haven't even hit conference play, and that makes me really sad for some of the players. I know we'll talk a little bit about CJ Stokes. Hunter, you can go a little bit more in depth on that, but overall, the feel is just the same thing. I feel like every week, the guys go through a game. It's time to come back, watch film, put the head down, and get right back to work. He said the psyche of the team was still in good spirits and that they were just ready to win a football game. I think my takeaways is now we're heading into conference play. We're playing Rice. I mean, a team that's 1-3 as well. And so they're also looking and hungry for a win. They're known to have mistakes, known to have penalties. So I think it's really up for Charlotte to sharpen up, play clean football, and really just allow I don't know if it's going to be Trexler or if it's going to be Deshaun, but allow either one of them to have time to make plays, protect the quarterback, and just play clean and simple football. I think that's my takeaway. Hunter, what were some of yours?
Yeah, caught the end of, or I guess most of practice yesterday, and I guess I'll just hit the like QB health first, and then go into some thoughts from Tuesday. Max Brown was out and about with the team. He also traveled to Indiana and was without a brace there on the sideline, not necessarily working out, but kind of mimicking footwork and doing regular quarterback things, at least with that offhand. He was back at practice Tuesday, but Trexler Ivy was leading with the ones again. And I think we talked about it on the show last time. I think he's your guy, at least moving forward right now. But as Biff Poggi said, when Deshaun Purdy comes back, he's the guy. And Purdy was back at practice yesterday. I think that was his first kind of padded practice, working his way back. So we'll see what happens on Saturday. Uh, but at least as of Tuesday, I think it'll be Trexler. And you kind of go back and forth, right? As Trexler showed you, he's that cool, calm, collected presence that you need in a huddle. And I think right now, especially with the defense, we're going to get into that here in a little bit. You need someone on offense who is playing turnover-free football, someone who's not taking huge risks, a game manager. You need someone that can go in there, find the right person, get them the ball. It doesn't have to be flashy, but sustain drives and keep your offense on the field, give your defense a rest. And right now, I think that's been Trexler. So I think seeing how they progress through is going to be interesting because this is a really big game for Charlotte. Like when you look at Rice on paper, this team came to Charlotte last year and manhandled the 49ers. And when you look at it this year, a 1-3 start, and Des Morgan said it yesterday. Desmond Morgan, apologies. That's what he wants to be called now. Let me read. I'm just going to delete that. Desmond Morgan. He said yesterday that they're a 1-3 team just like us. They probably looking at us like it's going to be an easy game, and that's not the case. And that's the mindset you need to take, especially on the road, going to a big opponent. And this is a big spot for Charlotte. But as far as what I got from Poggi on Tuesday, Jaquarius Conley was probably the biggest story. He transferred from North Carolina, so his story is interesting. He started his career at North Carolina in 2020, was a true freshman, getting a ton of playing time for the Tar Heels. And then he had a big season-ending injury in 2022 and recovered. And then in the spring of 23, around April, hit the transfer portal ultimately didn't play 23-24. So he took a year off before committing to Charlotte, reuniting with Dre Bly, reuniting with Dante Balfour, a lot of Tar Heel connections there, Tim Brewster, another one. And now at this point, he's ineligible. But Poggi was told, Jaquarius was told all the way up until 24 hours before the opener that he was going to play the season. Yeah, he was available. He had done everything he needed to do. Here we are 4 weeks into the season. He's fully healthy. I mean, he's in pads and helmet at practice every day, even being ineligible. I talked to him a little bit yesterday, just briefly, and he said he couldn't wait to be back. Was looking forward to making his debut for Charlotte. Sounds like Biff is doing everything they can to make that happen. But it reminds me sort of the Tez Walker situation with North Carolina last year, where similar situation, a transfer deal, just completely ineligible until I think it was about midway through the season when they finally let him return. And Biff Poggi said it yesterday. It was reminiscent, Jay. I kind of wish you were there to hear it. He said I'm on a warpath. Except instead of getting people fired, it's getting his players eligible. So uh, interesting deal going on, and hopefully that all gets worked out. We saw this too with Ali last year, coming back midway through the season. So you're hopeful because watching some of Jaquarius's tape from Carolina, he's a difference maker. He's one of those guys that can help like be a staple in the back end of the defense. And I think slotting beside Ali, who's already got a couple picks this year, Charlotte really needs that, especially with some of the secondary woes. But as far as Indiana, I think the like pre-Indiana press conference, you kind of could tell Biff knew they were about to go up there. Jeremy said it on here. Indiana's a really, really good team right now. Kurt Cignetti is a great coach. He's had sustained success everywhere he's been, including Elon. And when just a quick fact, Kurt Cignetti was at Elon in 2018 and 2019. And then in a cycle that Will Healy was hired as Charlotte's head coach, Cignetti was hired at JMU just 11 days later. So he was available. Interesting thing. Charlotte went to Indiana, and the first half of that game was pretty competitive. Like if you look at the box score, at least in the first, I would say 20 minutes of the game, it looks like a real game. Charlotte gets a stop, holds them to a field goal early. It's 10-0, and at first you're kind of looking at it like this might get out of hand if Charlotte can't get some offensive production. And then CJ Stokes happens. I mean, it was kind of an up and down moment. So Trexler throws a touchdown to Colin Weber. Weber is his roommate. That's his first collegiate touchdown. It's in the game closest to his home. It's like a high for both of them. And then you see that little yellow piece of laundry on the field, and it's an illegal man downfield. So Colin's touchdown gets picked up on, I think it was 3rd and goal. And so now it's 3rd and goal from the 13. And Trexler comes to the line of scrimmage during a pass. But I guess whatever the key was, he checked to a run and hands it to CJ Stokes, who bounces off of 2 people and bowls in for a touchdown. And on that touchdown scoring play, he extends over the goal line and breaks his shoulder. So it's been that type of season for Charlotte. When you see a flash, someone like Justin Olson in the North Carolina game, boom, then he's on the sideline in crutches and a boot. And you have this stuff with Max Brown. You go 8 for 12 for $175 in the first half. Then you're on the sideline in a sling. That's what it's been for Charlotte, and that's mainly what the second half of Indiana was. The offense would score again. They go down 17-7. The offense walks right down the field again. Trexler leads them, throws the 25-yard strike to Zay Myers. It's 17-14, and I'm watching this game like Charlotte looks legit as at least as far as moving the ball, and this is the most we've seen against an FBS school, but you feel all right about what's going on. But can the defense get the stop? And I think that was the biggest topic conversation. And Poggi addressed it yesterday. I want to ask you about this, Hannah, but what did you think his temperament was on the defense? Because after the game, I'm not sure if you guys saw that presser, but he was pissed. He literally said, anytime we'd gain momentum, there'd be a huge chunk play. These have been thorns on our sides. Indiana could basically do whatever they wanted with us. And I'm curious what you thought about kind of how he approached it yesterday with some questions flying about the defense.
Yeah, I feel like I want to say he knows that it needs to be fixed and he's taking ownership of that. I mean, I don't think it's anything to discredit the players for. I think it's just the defense didn't play as well as they normally do. And I think he was disappointed in that fact. And I mean, if you look at some of the stats, I mean, especially in the American, I mean, Charlotte is ranked last in tackles for loss allowed and tied for 12th in for sacks allowed. So I don't know. I think it's a little toss up because I feel like the defense is probably exhausted for one. I mean, when the offense isn't out there for very long and there's a quick changeover and they're constantly on the field, I mean, they're going to be fatigued. They're going to be tired. So you can't really blame them for that fact. But at the same time, it's like you know that you're going up against a team like Indiana and you have to apply the pressure. So I don't think he did a bad job of, not taking ownership of the fact. I think it's just he knows the reality of the situation when it happened in that game, and they just ultimately need to be better and apply more pressure.
So talking more like into specifics, what happened with the defense? Was it like all three levels, or is it, hey, DBs are getting beat? Is it the front isn't getting enough push? They're not punching first and not getting pressure on the QB, allowing him to have those chunk plays. Where did that breakdown happen on defense, and how do you fix it? Because we always talk about like, oh, the offense isn't clicking, or oh, the defense isn't clicking, but what is the specific part that needs to be touched up and needs to be fixed?
Definitely. I think it struggles at all three levels, but I think it stems from the pass rush. I mean, you guys know the best corners in the league or in college. If you have no rush, it's going to be tough because that position is you can't touch the receiver, you can't lean on them. That's a 15-yard flag. So I think if you don't have anyone getting after the quarterback, which Charlotte really has not, they have multiple guys with 2 sacks, and that's Steven Sings coming from Auburn, and then Donovan Spellman coming from App State. Neither one of those guys have played more than 40 snaps this season, and the sack totals are like slotted differently on ESPN and PFF. So at least on ESPN, those are the guys that have the 2 sacks. So I think it's concerning with what's going on with Stone Handy. I think he's been dealing with some kind of foot injury. He played 20 snaps against JMU, played 8 at North Carolina, was out for Gardner Webb, and then played 11 at Indiana, which was his former school. So I know that meant a lot to him, and to play only 11 snaps tells me he's got to be dealing with some kind of injury. Similar with Chance Williams, it looks like he took a fall. They did get Io Tafasi back against Indiana. That was his first game coming from Florida State. He had 12 snaps in a quarterback hurry, so that's a good debut for him. I think it starts up front, but I also think Charlotte is missing 2 of the players that made the defense go last year, and their replacements haven't been up to par. And that's Nakai Hill-Green and that's Demetrius Knight. And this is no shade on Reed Wilford, Prince Bima, Cam Burden. Those are all good dudes, and those are all holdovers from the Healy era who have put in a lot of time in this program. So no shade there. But that second level of defense, I mean, Charlotte's given up 15.71 yards per completion. Think about that. That's the worst in the country. You're not going to beat anyone if every time if a pass is caught, it's for 15 yards. I mean, and that's been one of the struggles too. Dante Balfour had a really good start to the season against James Madison. That's first team preseason all AAC corner. And I'll read some numbers really fast and I'll tell you why I think this is happening. So last season, Dante was targeted 62 times, only allowed 32 catches, had 9 pass breakups, a pick, and only had 4 penalties. This year, through 4 games, he's been targeted 14 times, the most of any player on the team. He's allowed catches on 11 of those. He's got an interception against JMU, 1 pass breakup, no penalties. I think what he's struggling with right now is he's playing with a club on his hand. He's got a broken hand. I mean, he injured in week 2 against North Carolina, so he can't get physical as soon as the route starts. And he's having to do a lot more without that physicality, which can almost dictate that receiver's first and second step. So I think that's a struggle for him right now. You hope to see that improve because we've talked about it. Dante's the best player on this defense, and he has to be for them to be really good and be what they were last year. I think it'll be interesting watching the edge combinations because we've seen Lakota Dupree play a lot. He's playing really well. Like he's Charlotte's highest graded defensive player and run defensive player so far. He's playing a lot of snaps in the second half of these games, but I think he's working his way up the Osborne Trust rotation, basically. And in my mind, if you give up 390 and 19 points to Gardner Webb, and then you go on the road to Indiana and you give up 7 straight scoring drives. Curtis Rourke, Indiana's quarterback, went touchdown, field goal, touchdown, 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 touchdown. And then he was done. And then that was the game. Like there was the bend but don't break, the standing up in the red zone, the timely takeaways were not there. And I'll say this, Indiana is a damn good football team. That's a really good offense. I think they'll have a decent season in the Big Ten. But 7 straight drives, and that was Charlotte's first game this season without a takeaway. They're going to have to make those plays. That's what made Osborne's defense really good last year, was standing up in the low red, taking the ball away in a timely manner, and stonewalling the run. That was when Charlotte was in games and winning games last year. That's what was happening. And this year, you haven't seen much of that. There's guys running free, big plays, chunk plays, 57 chunk plays for 1,300 yards. I mean, the stats aren't good, but I think, and I said this on the radio yesterday, I think I'm going to be writing a lot of stats this season that are like in conference play, Charlotte is giving up, because that's they need to trend up for this team to get to where they want to go.
When we had Osborne on, there was a thing we talked about, kind of like talking with Moneyball. And Moneyball basically means like if you lose one of like your big stars who's able to hit homers and steal home runs and catch balls and steal bases and do all these things, when you replace him, you aren't replacing the player, you're replacing the productivity. So if you can't replace all of those things, maybe you get 3 guys that can all do something that can equal what that one guy did. And what you trying to mention was how you missed Nakai Hill-Green, you missed Demetrius Knight, and we talked to Osborne about trying to find guys that can fill that productivity. Hunter, and I guess Hannah as well. How do you think, I guess, the defense's job has done this season with replacing those big name guys? Because you aren't having someone like Demetrius Knight having a pick six against Maryland. That's not happening. So how are they replacing that? How well are they doing that? And can at any point can it turn around? Because like you said, Gardner Webb, you can't give up that many points and then turn around and have what, 6 straight touchdowns? Yeah, that's crazy.
I think that putting a lot of pressure on, like, this was Prince Beema's year, and he's already dealt with some injuries. He also leads the team with 3 missed tackles, like, or I guess led the team with 3 missed tackles last week. He has to be better. There's really just no way around that. The the run defense, I think, is Prince's strength of that versus pass coverage. But as you mentioned, Demetrius Knight in pass coverage is an NFL level linebacker. He was that good at that aspect of his game. And the Kai kind of had the blend of both that made him really good. And that's why they're succeeding at Colorado and South Carolina. I think Reed Williford is better in pass coverage, but he struggles at times in the run game. But they're looking at some of this depth, right? It's not the same caliber of depth as there was last year. I mean, these 3 guys, Reed, Cam Burden, and Prince, were the depth last year. This year, they're the starters. I mean, those are the guys. And the guys behind them haven't necessarily, like, we haven't seen much of Aiden Kaler. We haven't seen Jonathan O'Cape much. We haven't seen Avery Morris coming from UTSA. These are guys that Osborne basically, I mean, they have to step up and be that depth, because one thing is, especially with Prince missing time, when you have that second or third guy out there, that's your defense is only as good as your weakest link, right? If you're not fitting on run fits, if you're not in the right place in pass coverage, that's why these guys are running wide open. At least that's how I think. Hannah, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I definitely think leading up to this year, I mean, we talked a lot. My MVP was Prince Beema, and I think he definitely has to be better. I mean, this is his year to make a final impression and stance, and you can't miss tackles at his level and with as much experience as he has. That just can't happen. I mean, but also in the game against Indiana, you had 3 guys who had 4 solo tackles, and there needs to be more than that. I feel like, especially against a team like Indiana. I mean, we have Mordecai McDaniel, Dante Balfour, Ali Ali, and you have guys that can make the plays. It's just getting them to that level and getting them to Coach Osborne's expectation, I think, is the challenge.
You just named 3 guys. All those guys are defensive backs. That tells you how many guys are running free. If all your defensive backs like that are leading the team in solo tackles, that tells you everything you need to know. Like, sorry,
Right.
Go on.
Yeah, I feel like this is how I feel about the whole team in entirety. I feel like there are so many guys on this team that are good and that can be good. I just feel like it's the all of the components coming together, whether that be coaching, whether that be, I don't know, just the overall overarching theme of this team is that there are good players on this team. It's just the ability to showcase and find the holes, find the avenues, find the exact plays for them to showcase their talents.
Yeah, Hunter, you said there's three DBs, right, who are like leading the team in tackles or whatever. We have Chris on. We talked about when you're a QB, the first thing you look at is let me find the safeties, let me find the DBs, right? Let me see what they're doing, and then I can kind of get a gauge on what the defense might be running. If they're leading, does that mean that the DBs are in the box more? They're coming down, they're coming deeper to try to stop the run, enabling teams to throw over their heads because they're not sitting back and they're more up on the line. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think with Charlotte, they've trailed in every game this year. And but teams have been having their way with like teams are getting the run, right? Last year, we're going to talk about Rice in a minute. Even last season, Dean Connors was carrying at 10 yards a clip against his team. That's the run game, being able to stop the run. If a team can run on you, they can do anything on you. And if you're having to bring that eighth guy into the box, then they're going to have that man-to-man opportunity. That's the floaters. That's whatever you would think of. That's what Alonzo Barrett was doing to them in week one, finding the man-to-man and going at it. What did Chris Reynolds call a slot fade? A touchdown. And that's what it is. And that's Charlotte's dealt with a lot of the struggles. I do want to shout out Travion McGee, though. He's got 19 total tackles. He's another DB. He's the surest tackler on the team with an 89.6 grade, at least on PFF, and he's registered with no misses. I always wonder how accurate this information is on there, but shout out to him because he's one of the guys that is playing for Jaquarius Conley right now. So we talk about the money ball reference, getting guys that can do different things. I think Jaquarius is the home run, right? He's the guy that can take away the run. He can be there in the post. Dante Balfour's talked a lot about him. Osborne's talked about him. There's a lot of excitement around this guy getting on the field, but I do want to shout out some of the guys behind him, Travion being one of them, playing a ton. Uh, this is an interesting stat, and I want to switch to the offense for a minute because I think we've seen a little bit of production there, especially in the running game. But I'm about to name 6 or 7 guys, and I want you guys to see if you can pick the correlation. And if this goes bad live, I'll just cut it out. Trexler Ivy, team's leader in completion percentage at 71%, leader in touchdowns with 3. Hassan Wilson, the team's leading rusher. Henry Rutledge, the highest average of any rusher. Jairus Mack, Sean Brown, Colin Weber, Bryce Kennan. What do these guys have in common?
I was gonna say like walk-ons, but I don't think that's all of them, you know?
Yeah,
That's not it.
not all walk-ons.
Old regime?
Old regime.
There it is. Okay.
All of these guys are Will Healy holdovers. I think
Mm,
that can say a couple things. Biff Poggi and the staff picked the right guys to keep,
yeah. But
but some of the production that you would expect from some of their guys isn't there. And I mean, obviously, what comes in that is injury. Max Brown and Deshaun Purdy, Teron Kelman, and Cartavius Norton just had a really good game against Indiana, by the way. That was his best game. He looked like the running back that Biff Poggi was talking about.
hold on, are you trying to say that Will Healy is on the same island that Frank Reich is on, sipping a margarita, saying, "Hey, you're benefiting off of what I did"?
Mm,
I mean, maybe not on the same
after
island.
that,
He might be on a much smaller scale island with way less millions involved, but he's out there with a little bucket hat on somewhere for sure.
That was
And
satire. Please don't come for me. Discord.
the 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 two positions though that are very clearly dominated by Healy holdovers, you can call them, is receiver and tight end. Like the tight end room is what is Will Healy's group. I mean, and then Jairus Mack, Sean Brown, those are the two that are really And then you got Jack Reynolds on the list too, but like mainly the tight ends. Colin Weber, Bryce Kinnon, guys like that. Jake Clemens is on here. It's interesting to see just kind of like the holdovers and how they're doing now because a lot of these guys were walk-ons. We talked about Sean Brown, we talked about Henry Rutledge, we talked about Hassan Wilson, Trexler Ivy. A lot of those guys are, but Colin Weber, Jairus Mack, those guys were on scholarship. So that's interesting to me. But I do want to talk about the running game really fast. Going against a team in Indiana who is allowing about 60 yards a game on the ground, and to go in there and put up your best real production of the season, 137 yards, 86 of those coming in the first half. Charlotte looked like what you would expect a Biff Poggi led team to look like against Indiana, and they were putting the ball on the ground, putting the ball in Cartavius Norton's hands. He had 11 carries for 58 yards, forced 6 missed tackles. Obviously, Stokes is the bright spot, but then, like I said, the way the season has been immediate, just like dip, going 5 carries, 25 yards and a touchdown, and then immediately exiting for the season. That's tough for him. Teron Kelman was back at practice today, which is exciting for Charlotte. They're going to need him moving forward. But I think if you can build on that, if you can find a way to run the ball with success, 4 or 5 yards a clip, you're going to open up the game for whether it's Deshaun Purdy, whether it's Trexler Ivy, or when Max Brown returns. That has to be a staple of this team. And I think I talked about this briefly with the Gardner-Webb game. Even without the sack total that Deshaun Purdy took, I think it was 79 yards, Charlotte only rushed for 92 yards against Gardner-Webb. And I know in a game that you're trailing, your rush total is never going to be as high as if it's a closer game or if you're leading because you're trying to air it out and bring the score closer. But it's just, I think this is where they have to build. They have to go to Rice and play this brand of smash mouth football that makes them who they are. Because I think one thing about this team through 4 games is we have not seen the offensive ceiling at all. Because, I mean, you've played 3 quarterbacks in 4 games. I think we've seen the floor. I think we saw the floor against Gardner-Webb. But one thing is for sure is this offense and defense really has no identity. I do not know what the identity of this team is because they look different every single week. And
Yeah.
I guess with that, let's get into the Rice preview. This is a big game, guys. Charlotte has to win this game in my mind. Biff Poggi wouldn't say that, but in my mind, they have to. There's no doubt about it.
Are you ready to elevate your school spirit? Look no further than onecampusco.com. Whether you're in the classroom, on the field, or cheering from the stands, we're dedicated to bringing academics, athletics, alumni, and fans together. Founded by our alumni-owned parent company, One Chapter in 2021, we recognize the need for quality apparel at reasonable prices and created a shopping experience that connects fans with their university. Join us in showcasing your pride and giving back to your community. With onecampusco.com, you're not just a student, athlete, or fan, you're part of a vibrant family. Together, let's celebrate what makes our university special. Visit us at www.charlotte.onecampusco.com using promo code HWY49 for 10% off.
So, like Hunter said, this is one of those games where last week, in the Tuesday press conference, Biff was, saying everything but saying we're going to get trounced by Indiana because the truth was Indiana was just a better football team, with more talent. This isn't that week. This is Rice, who is also 1-3. And the spread is Rice -7, Charlotte money line at +225. So for the Niner fans, I don't know if you want to start touching this, but the value is there. Totals at 46.5. And then Rice's most recent loss last week was a 37-14 defeat against Army. Now, they have a starting QB named EJ Warner, who's kind of having I don't know what the word is. He's completed 87 of what do you got, Hunter?
Poggi compared him to Ivy yesterday. I'll just lead with that.
Okay. EJ Warner has completed 87 of his 138 pass attempts. He has 5 touchdowns and 6 interceptions on the season. And I was kind of running through their stats and seeing what happened, and they're rushing more than they're receiving. It looks like there's like a winter solstice happening in Hunter's room right now. But Dean Connors is
What is
their
going on?
right. Dean Connors is their senior running back, and I think that they're going to be leaning on Dean a lot. He has 5 touchdowns on the season, 41 carries for 248 yards. Now, the defense, Hunter, you were talking about how Charlotte hasn't been able to, get to the quarterback that much. Well, Rice has 14 sacks on the season to Charlotte's 9. That's a pretty big gap when you really think about it. So I guess looking at this game is really about when you have two teams that are both not doing well and they both think this is the game to get back on track, to get back on the road and, kind of fix their season. It's all about who punches first because in a game like this, I don't think people are going to make comebacks in a game like this. You got to punch first. You got to get that first touchdown. You got to force that first turnover, and then you can start getting into your flow of the offense and defense. For Osborne, a lot of people want to start, picking on that defense. This is your time to, showcase what you guys got for the offense. A lot of people might say, hey, that Trexler Ivy comeback was a flash in the pan. Well, let's say you get it back against Rice. There's a lot of things that can happen coming into this game, and I'm excited for it. But this is not Indiana. This is not one of these other teams that Charlotte is a heavy underdog for. You can win this game. You should win this game, and I'm interested to see what happens on Saturday.
And that's the thing is we talked before the season. 1-3 in the non-con was pretty realistic. If, like I said, if you got to 2-2, beat JMU, that's great. But if you see what JMU is doing right now, put 70 on North Carolina last week. I mean,
Nuts.
So
Nuts.
1-3 makes sense. And I said it before, if you can get to the bye week 3-3, they play Rice at Rice and they have ECU at home. If you can get to the bye week 3-3, you feel dangerous if you're Charlotte. That's a big if. Both of these games are going to be tough. And I think going to Rice is all about running the ball. And I can't tell you guys how many snaps Henry Rutledge is going to play, but Hannah, you're going to love this. He played the most he's played on offense this season at Indiana. He had a 33-yard reverse on one of these long scoring drives. They got to keep using him, whether it's jet motion, orbit motion, just as a scat back. Like if he's not your true tailback, if you've got guys like Kelman, like Norton said it yesterday. That's your change of pace back. They don't know how to tackle because if you see a Henry, you got to break down, chop your feet. If you see Norton, you got to come with it because he's going to run you over. So it's two different. It's like almost like a night and day type thing for Charlotte, and they're going to have to swing first. You're right. They haven't done that this year, Jeremy. They haven't scored first. And I think Saturday you got to break the trend.
I also think, we have to sustain drives. You can't go and you can't have 3-and-outs over and over again. Give your defense a rest, allow them to actually play to their full capacity. I definitely think Charlotte needs to come out swinging first and throw that first punch. This is a chance for them and the offense to find their identity, like you said, Hunter, and kind of prove to everybody what they're made of. Coming against a team that they lost to last year, it's kind of like, okay, a revenge game. Let's get them back this time. We talked about the passing defense. There's still room for improvement there. Overall, I think there just needs to be more tempo on offense as well. Just keep the tempo going and stay on schedule, protect, whether it's Trexler, protect Deshaun, allow them time to make plays, and just find some offensive rhythm in this one against Rice.
At the end of the season, you can always look back and pinpoint a period or a week where it could have gone two different directions. And I think this is that week, right? At the end of the season, we'll look back and you'll say you were 1-3, but do you go into Rice, you beat Rice, you come back Halloween weekend, or not Halloween, but ECU. Now you're 500. Now you got some momentum. Now you got, okay, all right, we're only 3 wins away from that lucky number we always talk about, which is 6. This is actually within reach. We can do this. Now you have coach coming on Tuesdays and he's back to bigging up his team, and you got Deshaun Purdy maybe who's healthy and has a good game, and people are saying, okay, maybe Deshaun Purdy can really bridge that gap between Max Brown coming back, right? Or it can go the other way. You lose to Rice. ECU comes in. I don't even want to mention that, and then you're 1-5. And this is one of those times where it's like a point in history where it splits off. Which direction is Charlotte going to take, right? Are you going to go in there and beat them and come back to Jerry Stadium and have a full crowd for ECU and everyone's going crazy? Or is it going to be the opposite where it's a bleak season, and I just think this week is going to be monumental for the rest of the season for Charlotte.
This is a gut check game. Rice came to Charlotte last year and ran the ball for 240 yards. Dean Connors ran for a buck 87 at 9.7 yards a carry. Charlotte moved the ball with Trexler at quarterback. Charlotte moved the ball for just 154 yards. They got manhandled by this team last year. And this is that gut check game, right? Because if we're playing devil's advocate, saying Charlotte finds a way to get to 3-3, beating Rice on the road, beating ECU at home, then they got Navy at Navy, who just blew out Memphis, which is crazy. And then they go to Memphis, host Tulane, host South Florida. I mean, like, this is a brutal stretch after
This
those
is
two
it.
games.
This is it.
You got to get these two.
It
Like,
reminds me of that meme with Shia LaBeouf in Transformers where he's talking to that guy and he's like, "This is it. We're
this
here.
is it.
We're here right
Yeah.
now. Like, come on, like lock in." So, like you said, man, this is gut check time. I'm excited. What's it called? Rice walked in.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is what it is. They walked in your trap and took over your trap. That's what happened, man. Can you go and do the same to them?
Now it's time to take over their trap.
Someone clip that, please. I'll do it.
Oh my word.
Just to show you how far or how fast college football changes, though. So last year, Rice came in, and as Hannah just said,
Now it's time to take over their trap.
Rice came into the Richardson Stadium last year, beat them by 21 points. The year before, remember, 2022, Charlotte starts 1-7. Will Healy gets fired right after the FIU game on homecoming when, as huge favorite, Charlotte loses. Very next week, Pete Rossamondo is interim head coach. Charlotte goes to Rice and beats them 56-23. Charlotte scored. There's one of those Indiana type games where Charlotte scores 7 touchdowns in a row. Like it's like, who is this team? And that's how fast college football changes. And that's how fast they got to make it change this weekend, because they got to flip that totem pole right the other way and see what Charlotte can do. Because we talked about the schedule upcoming: at Navy, at Memphis, Tulane, South Florida, at FAU, which is always tough in the season with UAB. There's some big games, and they've got some big spots too. They got games on ESPNU, CBS Sports Network, and ESPN still on the schedule. There's a lot of fun to be had for this team, and I think it could be really interesting, especially if you get Max Brown back later in the season. That's the thing that is tough when you talk about this team, because the guy that you want to have isn't there. But I think they're riding with Trexler. Speaking of this, Trexler Ivy's birthday was yesterday, so shout out, happy birthday, man. Best of luck.
One more thing, you guys just see this. This has nothing to do with Charlotte, but UNLV starting quarterback Matthew Sluka is entering the transfer portal after being 3-0 over an NIL dispute because another college is offering him more money.
Imagine quitting on your boys that you did
That's
spring and fall and 3 weeks of the season with.
You're 3-0.
That's
and
ridiculous.
Someone gave him a bigger bag, and you're like halfway through, and you're like not halfway through, but you're a quarter way through the season, and you're like deuces. Like I said in that pod, a few pods back, right? Like the NIL sphere, the NIL landscape is ever changing by the day. We're gonna start seeing some crazy stuff, and I guess this is just a catalyst for it, because imagine Joe Burrow being like, "Yeah, actually, the Giants offered me 200 million more. I'm just gonna stop playing until you guys trade me there." Kind of nuts.
We're going to end this with a disturbing stat. Okay. Charlotte ran for their biggest rushing total of the season, 137 yards last week at Indiana as a team. Okay. Darrell Robinson, former 49er, ran for 16 carries, a buck 56, and 2 touchdowns last week against FAU. And with that, no, I'm just kidding. But that really did that really did happen.
I was
though,
like, "Yo,
man.
is this a Charlotte pod? Is this a Charlotte pod? The way you just massacred them?
No,
Jesus
dude, it's
Christ."
crazy. That's just, I saw that and I was like, obviously I'm happy for Darrell, man. He was one of like all 3 of our favorite interviews last year. Like
Yeah.
that dude deserves all the good stuff that's coming to him, but that's tough to see.
Talk about, the guys that Biff brought in aren't producing, but they go somewhere else. And
Well, that just goes to show you have to tap in to their potential, into the playmakers that you have, and find ways to use them.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Darrell experience here was tough though, because you
She was
see
just
him
injured.
yeah, you see him in 4 games, then you never see him again. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And his best game here was 11 for 71 and a touchdown in the opener against South Carolina
Yep.
State.
Yep.
So,
I remember that.
but
Good for him.
yeah,
Yeah.
shout out Darrell. All
Yeah.
right, that's how we're gonna end it. We want all our homies to win. No.
Yeah.
All right. Appreciate y'all tuning into the Highway 49 podcast. We'll be back with more soon. And Charlotte's on the road. And then we're all back together for ECU at home. So
Woo.
appreciate y'all tuning in. We'll be back soon.